Welcome to Groups This Week. As a church, we exist to help all people become fully devoted followers of Jesus. We believe doing life together is a crucial part of that journey. During this time, we're going to unpack and dig deeper into the sermon we heard this past week. Let's dive in as we continue to grow in our faith, knowledge, and love of Jesus together.
Hello, good to be with you, and we're continuing our series on the songs of Ascent. These are some of the psalms that the pilgrims who moved towards Jerusalem would sing together to encourage one another as they went up to the temple. And so Nathan is here with me this morning, and Nathan,
Hello.
This week you preached on Psalm 126.
Yes.
So I have a few questions for you just to kind of hear about it. Can you just give us an overview of Psalm 126? What is it about?
Yeah, so Psalm 26, there are two big parts when it comes to the psalm. So verses 1 to 3, it just remembers the goodness of God. So in a previous time, we see God act and move. Because of that, they are able to celebrate and to see, because of what God has done, there is lots of joy that is included in remembering that. Not only does joy come from remembering what God has done, but we can also look hopeful to the future. Hey, you know what? Because God was so good, he worked and acted in the past. Surely he will do it again. And there's a hopeful future knowing that he will move and act on our behalf, which is great. But there's a lot of context, though, that's definitely happening behind this. A few of the things would be, this is a time period when Israel was allowed to go back to their homeland after being in exile. So just for quick context, Israel was under captivity. They were sent out to exile because of the Babylonian Empire. This is for various reasons, political, but one of the biggest reasons was because they turned away from God and they worshiped false idols. And as a natural consequence, they've been exiled and held in captivity in Babylon for around 50 years. So it's been quite some time. A whole generation has grown up not remembering what home was like. And something miraculous happens. And this is where we see in 2 Chronicles and Ezra chapter 1 that as a new ruler came in, and that is King Cyrus, so he's a Persian king. He comes in, Babylon's no longer the empire that is ruling the place, but it's King Cyrus that's ruling. And something happens. God moved the heart of King Cyrus. He moved the heart, he prompted his spirit to allow God's people to return home. And this is a very fascinating moment. It's really unbelievable. It's really remarkable. And for one of the reasons being, usually when an empire takes over, the primary thing that they want to do is use their power to get as much work out of the people group that they've conquered through slavery. They want to use them for to help them within their own system and life. And so it's really remarkable that he allowed some of them to come back home. Not only to come back home, but also to rebuild the temple and to encourage them to go back home and to reset. And so because of that, verse 1 to 3, they're celebrating. Man, the Lord has restored our fortunes. It's like a dream. My goodness, we were able to come back home. And because of that, our tongues are filled with joy and laughter. And as a result, God has done the impossible, moving the heart of this king, allowing them to come back home. And there we see joy. It's very joy, yeah.
So that word you just mentioned, fortunes. Now, that's an interesting word. Sometimes we think of fortune as like lots of jewels and gold. And so what are they talking about when they say the Lord has restored our fortunes? And should we expect God to give us?
Yeah. Fortune. Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
When it comes to fortune, especially within this passage, so we think, gold, jewelry, all this stuff, it would be a very narrow reading when it comes to this passage. Fortune within this context relates more so to restoring a previous circumstance or situation that the people have longed for. For example, right, things were good. They were at the temple. There was, within the city of Jerusalem, there's a functioning joy that, like, whoa, this is the fortune that we have. This is the city. There's a lot of life and things that are happening. That has been taken away. Because that's been taken away upon arrival, asking God to restore their fortune is to restore the previous state in which they have once been. And so one of the scholars would say as well that it doesn't focus, again, not so much with the gold or with the jewelry, but it is to restore the religious community life of rebuilding the temple and to have, again, a state, to restore the state that the people of God once had. And so I think for the Psalms of Ascent, again, if it serves for us as a metaphor for our walk in faith with Jesus, asking God to restore our fortune is as asking for him to restore and to renew our own lives, maybe that has once been desolate and broken, to restore it once again, to rebuild, to renew our connection and relationship with God. And so that's sort of some of the jumps that we can make there with that.
You can see why the people had a lot of joy. They're returning to their homeland. I can see. How does that apply to us as Christians? Where do we, how do we experience joy? Where does that come from?
Yeah, this type of joy, it's in a totally different category than what we experience. Of course, there are things that can give us temporary joy. Hanging out with family, playing a good game, listening to music, eating good food with friends. But that type of joy, it's temporary and it doesn't last. But the joy that is talking about here within this passage is a joy that is related to the working of God and how he moves. That within our own life, we can look back and we can see how God has moved, how Jesus has worked within our own lives. And because of that, we can be joyful. My goodness, he has saved us from our sin. He has given us new life. Many testimonies that we get to hear include how there's this dark period, but when God showed up, when Jesus showed up, things changed. And when we remember how God moved, we can be joyful. There is a joy that comes, and it's not dependent on us, but it's dependent on him. And so this joy is in a totally different category. And not only do we see that as we remember how God has moved, but this joy also gives us looking forward to the future. Hey, because again, God has done this in the past, we can look joyfully into the future, knowing that there is hope. And we get to experience joy once, ultimately when Jesus returns and makes all things new, there is joy in that as well. So the Christian life, it's marked by joy. It's a byproduct of joy. And those are just a few things that we get to see and experience in the Christian life.
Thanks, Nathan.
Yeah.
Wow, thanks for diving in a bit deeper for us.
Yeah. Hi, happy to be here.
We hope you enjoyed the teaching today. If you're wanting to follow along with our community group's discussion guide with your group, you can head to cachurch.ca/media where you can find the discussion guide. Not only are there questions there related to the sermon, but there's also prayer prompts that relate to the passage or the topic that we were talking about, and practices that you can, on an individual level or a group level, begin integrating into your life to not only bring this knowledge into your mind, but to begin living it out.